Hey, Disney released a new live-action remake of Peter Pan. Yeah, no one cares, bro. Yeah, well, I care. I care a lot, actually. And just because everyone hates it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. I will go in with an open mindset and prove that once and for all, live-action movies aren't that bad. Or just laugh at how bad it actually is. I don't mind either way, honestly.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can.
So yeah, Disney remade Peter Pan and decided to call it Peter Pan and Wendy. Wow, so progressive of you, Disney. What do you want, a medal? Well, here's a smooch on the cheek. And it would make sense for them to do this because it had some pretty demeaning stereotypes and, let's just say questionable content for a kid's movie.
And hey,
says Disney in a condescending voice.
we love our live-action remakes because they make us lots of money, huh?
But is it really a cash grab or a thoughtful revision? Well, let's find out. Now, of course, everything revolves around AI these days, and since being AI seems to be the most unhinged, I'll ask it to give me a review of this movie. Oh, okay. Yeah, tell me how you really think, Bing. Anywho, here's somewhat of a not really quick rundown of this movie. The film begins in London, where Wendy Darling is spending her last night at home with her parents and her two younger brothers, John and Michael, before going to boarding school. Wendy is unhappy with her departure and tells her mother that she doesn't want to grow up and go off to school and stuff. And then the mother sings a little song and like, it's actually kind of good. Later that night, Peter Pan appears in Darling's nursery, which isn't creepy at all, I guess. Having heard Wendy's wish, he claims that he can take her to a place where she'll never grow old. Psh, heard that before, Botox. With the help of Peter's companion and friend Tinkerbell, Wendy, John, and Michael all fly to a magical place called Neverland. Sounds familiar, huh? They arrive in Neverland and get attacked by none other than Captain Hook himself. Gasp. So the kids crouch behind this rock island thing where he can clearly see them hello and shoots them straight on. Like, seriously, everybody at least would have a concussion, like 32 and a half broken bones, but it's a kid's movie, so boo-boos don't exist, I guess. They get split up, I guess, and Wendy meets the Lost Boys, who aren't all boys, and says,
Which means you must all be
Lost Boys.
every last one of us. You're not all boys. So? But I guess it doesn't really matter.
let's see, how can we explain to people that this group of children that used to be just boys and is literally called Lost Boys but is now both genders doesn't matter and we're too lazy to explain why is this? How about we just have the main characters say it doesn't matter? Why, Jonathan, you genius, you deserve a raise. Anywho, Wendy sees that Hook captured her brothers. Pretty convenient that he didn't happen to capture Wendy, our main protagonist, huh? And she just happened to end up flown to the same island as the Lost Children were on. May not analyze children movies too much. Hook brings the two boys to Skull Rock. Gasp, I get that reference. That's from the OG film, mate. Shut up. Anywho, Peter Pan shows up just in time to save the day, and Hook and his men end up being chased out of the Skull Rock by none other than TikTok Rock with music I can only explain as Russian. Take a listen. They all travel to a place where Peter Pan and the Lost Children have been living for the past forever. And something different from the original is that they give backstory for our main villain. Speed? No, you've been drinking too much kombucha, get a life. We find out Captain Hook used to be Peter Pan's best friend until... I don't think you're ready for the spoiler. Are you ready? You're not ready. Okay, again. Peter Pan chopped off his hand and fed it to the croc. Wait, we're supposed to be rooting for this guy? Well, anywho, somehow the Lost Children got kidnapped by Hook and his men, and Rook kills Peter Pan. Don't worry, he's not actually dead. Whilst being captured, she finds out that James, that's his real name by the way, went back to the real world because he was missing his mummy. Wait a minute, why aren't we rooting for this guy? We switch scenes and see Peter dead, lying on the ground until Tiger Lily has to come and save him. Wait, don't save him, I'm not rooting for him anymore. So she and Peter go and save the day, and Wendy fights pirates and doesn't get killed, big shocker. Also, Peter apologizes to James. Yeah, I'm calling him James now, get over it. He's obviously taken off guard like, whoa bro, you for real? And still tries to kill Peter. Okay, maybe I'm not rooting for him anymore. Anywho, Hook falls to his death, or at least I think it's supposed to seem that way. I mean, he's a pirate, I'm assuming he knows how to swim. Why is it such a big deal? But of course he forgives Peter or something and they become friends again before all this happens because emotional impact.
Emotional damage.
So everybody goes back to London, and I mean everybody. Even the Lost Children. And the parents are like,
Oh no. Anyway.
Seriously, these parents must be the most chill people in the world. Later, Wendy finds out that the house she's living in was Peter Pan's old house. Insert Vine, boom, sound effect. And she offers him to live with her and her family. I mean, I was under the impression that they like hated each other the whole film, but I don't know, man. But he refuses because reasons. Then I'm assuming Wendy goes off to school and grows up to become an entrepreneur later, something I don't even know or care. And then Peter Pan returns, and spoiler alert, Hook's alive, and Peter Pan goes back to save him because he's his true friend. Do I hear a sequel? So, wholesome ending for everyone, except for those poor, dear, sweet, precious parents.
And that's the end.
So that's the schmovie. Should we all hate on it forever and ever like being said we should? Well, first off, stop taking advice from AI because that never ends well. I mean, have you watched any movies? And second off, of course, Bing is mostly just mimicking most of the internet's opinions on this movie. And by most of the internet, I mean, well, 300 people on Twitter. And there's one thing you should know about the internet, it's that they're 40% right 90% of the time, and the other times they're somewhat between 10% and 110% right or wrong, depending on the color socks you're wearing on the third Tuesday of the month. So overall, I feel the story made some necessary changes, like getting rid of the mermaids. Thank you. And in some areas, it just kind of felt a little bland. Like the whole setting, I get it. It starts off in London. London's boring. But Neverland just felt so empty and desolate. It didn't have near the amount of magic the original had. And you could argue that it's because they're trying to make it more realistic. You can make that argument. It's not a good argument, but it's an argument you can make. You look at the movie Hook, which is from the 90s. They still made Neverland feel like a live-action wonderland without making it feel empty and sad like my bank account. Also, add some flowers to the islands or something. Make it interesting to look at. The whole time I was just hoping they would go somewhere interesting. In terms of storyline, I didn't mind it that much with what they changed from the original. They gave Hook a backstory and gave him the classic misunderstood villain trope which Disney loves with these live-action movies. The thing is, everyone's always asking Disney to not make their characters 2D cookie-cutter run-of-the-mill villains or antagonists, if you know what I mean. But when they do it with this movie, like they give Hook motive for what he's trying to do, everyone hates that. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. Overall, it just was kind of slow, kind of like me on a Sunday. But it could have just been like the setting, like I said before. I can't really think of too much they could have cut out to make it more faster paced. Or, I don't know, it's kind of slow, you know? I guess I like that they gave Wendy more of a prominent role, but she kind of already did in the original film. They made her the main protagonist who's sort of learning and growing throughout the film rather than the grounded mother figure like in the original, which is fine. I just don't prefer the new Wendy over the old Wendy. The old one was always the voice of reason, and in this one, there isn't really that character who's the mature one, since they opted to make Wendy a hashtag relatable edgy teen character or something. She's forced to grow up and realize that it's not necessarily a bad thing to grow up, but I just didn't see enough of that realization throughout the movie, if you know what I'm saying. And towards the end, her life flashes before our eyes, and we see her sad, old, and lonely reading a book. Couldn't be me, cringe. And maybe that's her moment? I don't know, man. I just don't really see it. I know there's some controversy with like the actors and actresses they chose, but like I actually liked most of them, even Tinkerbell. Like I feel like the reason why most people didn't like Tinkerbell was just because of the controversy with Little Mermaid, but I actually liked her, and I like that they added a bit more to her character. Like she wanted to be heard, and like Peter Pan was just always kind of like assuming what she was saying, but she was never ever really like heard, you know, so I kind of like that. Now Hook was a controversial one. He was different from the original film, which I didn't feel was a bad thing. The addition of Hook being Peter Pan's best friend, but then he grew up and got old, and then they became enemies, was just great. I think that a lot of people would argue otherwise, but I liked it. It gives Hook and even Peter a bit more history and more character development. It just makes me wish that they had focused on that more rather than Wendy and her growing up issues. Because gosh darn it, Disney loves their coming of age stories.
Bade.
But man, I feel like they really needed to make up their minds about whether this movie was going for something different or just being a live action remake, which honestly it just failed at both. That's probably why people hate this movie so much. It just couldn't really tell what it wanted to be. It wanted to stay true to the original film while changing up the characters and storyline just enough to annoy fans of the 1953 film. In the end, I feel it needed to just stick to setting itself apart from the original film. I get that they wanted to capitalize off nostalgia and all that, but it ended up kicking itself in the rear tushy because of it. It suffers from bland, boring storytelling and not staying true to the original. It felt they wanted to remove all the controversial parts but got carried away and went and added girls to Lost Boys. Hello? They removed all the sympathetic characteristics of Wendy, and rather than including the native people in a positive light, they went and removed them altogether, bar one pathetic scene and Tiger Lily, of course. It's so sad to see what this movie could have been, but instead we're just left with a dull, uninspired failure of a live-action remake. Now, is it a bad movie? No, I quite enjoyed it for what they tried to do. And they tried to add more backstory to the characters, which is always appreciated to see why the characters do the things they do. Oh boy, I guess I'll get to posting this before the movie's completely irrelevant, and I'll see you all back here for Pinocchio. Oh dear.